Dr. Ashley Boggan, the General Secretary of the General Commission on Archives and History of the United Methodist Church. With me is Reverend Dr. Bill Wilson, who currently serves as Senior Pastor of Historic St. George's United Methodist Church in Philadelphia. Reverend Wilson, Historic St. George's is about half a mile from Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was drafted and signed. Can you tell us a little bit about St. George's during that time?
During that time, it was early on in the life of the church. The church was founded in 1769, and when the Methodists bought this and gathered here after meeting 2 years in a loft house under the direction of Captain Thomas Webb. And coming here together, they worshiped for several years until the building was taken over by the British. And they used this as a cavalry training school to train the horses for battle. And so they would be used to all the effects of war and around them. So we were sort of a church of dispersion during that time. But Mary Evans Thorne opened her home, it's recorded in our records, as she opened her home and invited the congregation to come and gather with her. The church during that time suffered by numbers drastically because there was sort of a chaos time in the nation and in the life of the church.
So this church witnessed the arrival of British forces during the American Revolution. How did the church react to that conflict? And maybe how can that example help us react to conflict today?
The reaction to the conflict and what was going on in our nation was divided in the congregation. You had those who would be pro-British, those who were pro for freedom, and there was those who were pacifists and wanted peace through the whole process. So there was a division, but also the challenge of that time. But to my understanding, everyone seemed to work well together. They still gathered as a small group for worship. Many people drifted away during that time, but then eventually came back together. So even in the midst of that challenge, my understanding of the history of the church is that the people were able to abide with each other, to grow together, and to share together the love of Christ.
Historic St. George's, as the building, predates the Methodist congregation here. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the building that we're in?
The building was built in 1763 by a group of German-Dutch reformists who broke away from a local church down the street. And during that time, they built this building, and it was a shell of a building. But during that time, there were struggles, and eventually they realized they could not finish the building, nor could they go on and support the building and incur the cost. So the building was put up for auction. I heard it was listed in April of 1769. And then in November of 69, the auction went into being, and a young man purchased the building, but he was unable to make that type of decision on his own, so his father was required to pay the bill. The father objected. So in the long run, the Methodists were able to buy the meeting house here from this gentleman.
The history of this congregation is one that is nuanced and complex. Can you tell us a little bit about Richard Allen and how this congregation has dealt with racism and white supremacy?
Yes, we went through a very difficult time. When the founding of this church came about, we had many free African Americans who were attending this congregation and were an active part of this congregation. Richard Allen actually preached the service every Sunday morning at 5 a.m. for anyone who would like to attend. So in the follow-up to that, but then there was what some people would call is the walkout. I would refer to it as the toss-out, because during a time of worship, the head usher came and gathered and said, "You must leave at this time." And the men who were asked to leave were told, "Wait till the prayer is done. Wait until we finish praying." And he said, "No, you get up and leave now." And at that point, Richard Allen, Absalom Jones, and William White, plus others, got up and walked out of this building and eventually founded Bethel Church, which today we know as Mother Bethel Church, AME Church. So in the midst of it all, it was a difficult conflict. and it sort of tarnished the history of the church. So in recent times, in 2009, we had the Great Gathering under the direction of Pastor Fred Day, where there was a service of unity, where the members of Mother Bethel wanted to come here and worship together with the members of historic St. George's Church. And they came in and they worshiped, and it was a grand time. And in the midst of it all, there were crosses made out of nails taken out of the balcony. And those crosses were presented to the members and the leaders of Mother Bethel. It was a challenging time, a hard time, but a time that reconciliation needed to occur. And now on a regular basis, we tell the story of how we can rectify the past evils that were done. And so every year in March, we have what is called the Time Traveler, where we invite confirmation classes from throughout Eastern Pennsylvania Conference, Greater New Jersey Conference, and other places to come and gather and to hear this story told. And we tell that story. We talk about the story. We talk about what we can learn from our past so we don't repeat it in the future. And how key that is not to relive the evil of the past, but that we might seek to do better, to be better as Christian believers, seeking to spread the love and the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that sort of sums up that picture. So I believe that if we look together, we can bring reconciliation to all people when we practice true grace, when we are willing to tell the hard stories, and when we're willing to share the truth. By the way, a story about Thomas Rankin. He was a leader in the Methodist movement, a missionary that John Wesley sent over. He was bold enough in his journal to write about how he challenged the Congress at that time. How can you be fighting for liberty for this nation when you have enslaved human beings in poverty and slave labor? Today we can learn that we need to speak boldly to those who lead and not be afraid of what they might say about us, but to take a stand and to speak the truth in love.
So St. George's now houses a museum, and the museum is full of wonderful artifacts such as this lovely chalice that is before us. Can you tell us a bit about the museum, the artifacts, and the plans that you all have for revitalization of that space?
We are really excited that we have been blessed with the opportunity to have a brand new museum. We had a good museum, but it was growing tired. And through a generous grant from the Lilly Foundation, which we have been able to transform the museum, and currently it's under reconstruction under a very able young staff of museum and historians who are gathering together to create something brand new. Here you see a chalice, which is not brand new. It dates back to the 1780s, after the Methodists were allowed to celebrate communion for up to 1784 in the Christmas conference at Lovely Lane. We went to the local Episcopal churches for communion. But when communion was allowed in the local church, it is said that John Wesley sent a communion set to St. George's Church. And here is a chalice that remains from that communion set that we use on special days, on Christmas Eve, on Easter, on the anniversary service. We bring this out. We find that as a very sacred piece of the history of this church and to tell the story. But let me share with you about the new museum because it's exciting. Some new exhibits are going up. We are going to have a circuit riding horse, life-size horse. Not sure how it's all gonna fit, but still working on the details with everything that a circuit rider would carry will be encased on the second level of the museum. By the way, the museum is doubling in size because we have moved the offices to this level, and we will have 2 full levels for the museum. So one will be the circuit rider. Another would be tell about the accomplishments of African American religious leaders and how they formed and shaped the nation, and the church. Another item will be talking about the Methodist Book Concern, which was founded here by John Dickens in 1789, and how all that we know today as Cokesbury is the Methodist Book Concern. And we will be having a discussion on that and showing some pieces of that. And very exciting, I just saw some pictures of the interactive displays that are going up, taking some of our famous people of the past who will have an interactive response to the visitors that will come. And they will be very excited about it. But another key thing is beyond just the religious and the spiritual context will be the Crafting Philadelphia. We will show the crafts and the working of people's hands in different trades and the aspects of it and how it all influenced the life of Philadelphia and the ministry that we have carried out. So life is moving on, and I cannot wait till it opens, and we're looking forward to 2, 3, or 4 months away from a grand reopening and telling the story anew of Jesus and his love and the work of Methodism, the happenings of Philadelphia. And I am excited about what God has in store for us.
Thank you, Reverend Wilson. We appreciate your time and your stories from the past and your plans for the future.